So, have you ever watched a 5-year-old meticulously stack up a set of wooden blocks, or maybe carefully draw a slightly lopsided circle, and wondered to yourself, is that just simple play, or is there some kind of grand, complex architectural blueprint guiding that exact moment of their development? Well, today, in this explainer, we're actually looking behind the curtain of early childhood education. We're going to unpack the National Curriculum Framework for the foundational stage, or the NCFFS for short. We'll see exactly how massive, high-level educational policies translate into the adorable, everyday milestones of a child's life. Let's get right into it.
Here is the roadmap for this explainer. First up, the foundational stage. Then, the 5 developmental domains. Next, decoding the learning framework. After that, moving and growing, followed by feeling and connecting. And finally, supporting the journey.
All right, let's start with Section 1, the foundational stage, a critical window.
You see, the vision of the National Education Policy 2020 places a massive emphasis on universalizing quality early childhood care and education. Specifically, they're targeting kids between the ages of 3 to 8. But here's the thing, it's not just about academics, right? The NCFS mandates that this education absolutely must be deeply rooted in Indian culture and ethos. It envisions this beautifully holistic, integrated learning environment where children are naturally engaging with their surroundings, their families, and of course, their heritage.
And this brings us to a really important number, 8. Now, you might be asking, why stop at 8 years old? Well, it's because the period from birth right up to the age of 8 is universally recognized as the foundational stage of a child's life. This specific window sets the critical baseline for literally everything that follows. We're talking lifelong learning capabilities, behavioral patterns, and honestly, even long-term physical health. The idea is if you get it right by age 8, you've built a rock-solid foundation for the rest of their entire life.
Moving right along to Section 2, the 5 developmental domains, the Panchkosha.
What's so fascinating about this framework is how it brilliantly bridges ancient Indian tradition with modern educational research. It categorizes development into 5 distinct domains, collectively known as the Panchkosha. First up, we have physical development, which encompasses the Annamaya and Pranamaya koshas. This is basically bodily awareness and the active engagement of the senses. Second is the Manomaya kosha, covering emotional and social development. Third is cognitive development, or the Vijnanamaya kosha, focusing on intellect and conscious experience. Fourth is the Anandamaya kosha, which hones in on aesthetic and cultural development through the arts, aiming to bring a sense of joy. And finally, they add a crucial 5th element, the development of positive learning habits, which are absolutely essential once kids hit formal education.
But here is the real kicker. These domains, they do not operate in silos, not at all. They are completely interrelated and interdependent. This means development is a beautifully integrated process. Think about it. A teacher isn't just teaching math or running in isolation. A single, well-designed classroom activity, like a group game of building a block tower, can actually simultaneously develop physical dexterity, social negotiation skills, cognitive spatial awareness, and positive learning habits. It's basically a multi-tool for learning.
Okay, Section 3, decoding the learning framework, the blueprint.
So how do teachers actually use this? The framework uses this brilliant funnel approach. It starts super broad and gets highly specific. At the very top, we have our 5 broad domains. Those then filter down into 13 curricular goals, which are specific directions for the curriculum. Those filter down even further into 69 distinct competencies, which are essentially observable achievements. And finally, at the very bottom of the funnel, we arrive at the learning outcomes. And here is what a learning outcome actually looks like in practice. They are the granular milestones of learning. They progress in a logical sequence and allow teachers to plan out their daily content, their pedagogy, and their assessments. You know, if the domains are the sky, the learning outcomes are the grass. They are the tangible, real-world actions we literally see happening in the classroom. They tell the teacher exactly what to look for to know for sure if a child is actually progressing.
That takes us to Section 4, moving and growing, physical and motor development.
Let's look at a concrete example. When tracking precision and control in a child's hands and fingers, the evolution is pretty stark. In Bal Vedika 1, which is early preschool, a stated learning outcome is simply being able to hold a glass with one hand without spilling it everywhere. It's just a fundamental grip, right? But by the time that same child reaches grade 2, the outcome has evolved drastically. Now the expectation is that they can use smooth, coordinated finger movements to complete complex puzzles of 10 to 25 pieces, or use the appropriate pressure when holding writing tools. We literally get to see the neurological and muscular growth mapped out on paper.
And honestly, it goes way beyond just holding pencils. Under this physical domain, the outcomes are incredibly practical. I mean, children are assessed on their ability to recognize road safety symbols and walk safely in traffic. They are explicitly taught to identify danger and say no to strangers offering gifts or chocolates. The framework even measures sensorial sharpness, like distinguishing between a high and low-pitched sound. And quite remarkably, it tracks their ability to sit still and breathe rhythmically, practicing techniques like Anulom Vilom to center their minds. That's pretty amazing for early education.
On to Section 5, Feeling and Connecting, Socio-Emotional Development. Here, the framework expects children to transition from raw, unfiltered emotion to actual social understanding. A key outcome here is learning to describe emotions in socially approved ways. So instead of a child just throwing a toy across the room because they're mad, the outcome is for the child to stop crying and actively explain exactly why they are angry. Something like, "I am angry because he broke my block tower." It's all about giving them the vocabulary to understand and express their internal world.
In social interactions, well, they evolve dramatically over this time frame as well. Back in the early days of Bhavatika 1, children engage in what's called parallel play. That means they play near another child, maybe observing and imitating, but not really interacting. But by grade 2, the learning outcomes require them to invent completely new activities that involve multiple children, negotiate shared rules, exchange objects, and genuinely collaborate to complete a task. It is literally the journey from being a solo explorer to becoming an active, participating citizen of a community.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 6, Supporting the Journey, the Safety Net. Now, a major part of this educational ecosystem is the Manodarpan Initiative. This is a crucial psychosocial safety net provided by the Ministry of Education. It openly acknowledges a really important truth. True holistic development simply cannot happen if a student is struggling with mental health, anxiety, or stress.
To tackle this, the initiative offers direct, toll-free counseling support for students who might be confused, worried, or stressed out about studies, peer pressure, or personal relationships. It's a very clear signal within the broader educational framework that mental well-being is taken just as seriously as academic or physical milestones. The goal is making absolutely sure that no child is left to struggle in silence.
And that leads to the ultimate operational directive for educators here, early detection. If a child at a certain age just isn't hitting the expected milestones, whether that's struggling to balance on one leg or finding themselves unable to interact with their peers, the teacher's explicit mandate is to catch that developmental delay or learning gap and address it immediately, no waiting around.
It can be really easy to get lost in the dense bureaucracy of curricular goals, competencies, and developmental domains, right? But behind all that structural hierarchy, the ultimate goal of the NCFFS is actually incredibly simple and deeply human. It is all about nurturing a happy, healthy, and capable child who is deeply connected to their family, their peers, and their culture. So I want to leave you with this thought. The next time you see a young child carefully stacking blocks, awkwardly holding a crayon, or hopping enthusiastically on one leg, will you see just a moment of simple play? Or will you now see the complex, beautifully structured milestones of a human being quite literally building themselves from the ground up? Thank you so much for exploring the NCFFS with me today in this explainer. Keep observing, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one.